I was
Yeah.
like first aware of Finn when you were at wildcard, right?
Yeah.
And I thought that was cool because
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of wildcard and what they
Me
do.
too. I love
Um,
Katie and Paul.
and it's been really sick seeing you kind of with every new role you level up, right? Which is what we like to see.
It's kind of the
Um,
goal, right? That's always the
yeah,
focus. It's funny to talk about the wild card thing because you know, uh, my story with them is always kind of funny because I actually didn't get the job that I applied for there. Um, I so it was like 2022. I had been working for this company for on and off 3 or 4 years, and they had gotten into NFTs and Web3, and we had done a bunch of work with some really cool teams. Like we ended up launching like a NFT for Gucci, and we did some work with Mercedes Benz and Tommy Hilfiger in the crypto space. We had made toys for Yuga Labs, and we had our own NFT collections and all this stuff. And I was kind of like a little bit I like kind of got in working with them on that stuff towards the end of kind of the 2022 cycle. So I was like a little bit burnt out pretty quickly because it was like
yeah.
everything's taking off. I jump in, things skyrocket, and then they crash, and they crash really
That
hard.
was a tough time.
It was a really
Yeah,
tough year. 2022 was like it was a brutal. I mean, we're thinking this is probably mid 22, so it's like June or July of 22. I think when everything starts to hit kind of rock bottom. And I told my girlfriend at the time, I was like, I'm not happy here anymore. Like, I want to do something else. And so I started going on LinkedIn at the time, and just kind of every day I would scroll through and I'd look at whatever jobs existed. I would search Web3 marketing, and I would scroll through all the jobs. And one day, this like job listing for the Wildcard Alliance pops up. Actually, for the community, I think it's director of community position. And I applied for the job, and I went through like I think 2 or 3 interviews, 2 or 3 rounds of interviews. Um, and I remember after that, I like I reached out, and it was Katie had replied to me, and I get an email back, and I was like, hey, we've gone in a different direction, and I was like, okay, it is what it is, right? Gave him a shot, but then I get an email, or maybe it was someone. I might have actually been someone else who sent me the like you didn't get the job, but Katie I think had replied after that in the email thread and was like, hey, this job might not be the one for you. We really liked you. What would your ideal job actually look like? And I was like, well, to be honest, like community director, not really my thing. I was like, but marketing, that side of stuff, like I love all of that. And so we ended up talking a couple more times, me and Katie, and talked about like me coming on and doing community or like community like partnerships and marketing for them, because they were kind of gearing up for the original Wild Pass mint. So I ended up working on that, and that was awesome. And yeah, it's very funny because like I never really like I kind of had almost planned to like leave Web
oh, that's
three.
crazy.
Like I
Yeah.
wasn't. It was because I kind of had a shit experience,
Well, I
right?
mean,
Because
that
like
was a
I
really fucking hard time, man. Like,
yeah. Because I come
I
into the
think,
space, it's like I see Bored Apes 150 ETH, right? I'm
yeah,
thinking it's great, and then it's like within weeks,
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
seeing Bitcoin sub 30K, ETH is sub 2K, and I'm just seeing everything crashing around me, and I don't know if this, I don't like this is not my thing.
Yeah, I remember specifically at that time, I was like in Europe and I was like calling my friends in the States. I was like, guys, like, start getting ready with the buys, right? And like, it was at the point where my brother and I are involved in crypto. Like,
Yeah.
everyone around us knows we're in crypto and in Web3 gaming and stuff, but we're like the only hardcore believers, right?
Hmm.
So everybody's like, dude, you're nuts. Like, what the fuck are you doing? I'm like, guys, like, it can't get worse than this. Like, this was peak bear market. Like, D gods
Yep.
are doing the shoebies, like,
Oh God,
they're
dude.
they're they're
Yep.
like the peak of culture at this
Hmm.
time. And I'm like, guys, it literally cannot get worse than this. No offense, D gods. I'm just saying,
No, but
like,
that was my thought
yeah,
too. That was the
yeah.
capitulation point. Was I was kind of like I was like, I'm done with this, and then I talked to Katie and Paul, and I was like, okay, well maybe there's an angle here of like, okay, the stuff that I just did for the last year was kind of useless, the PFPs and all this stuff. It was just a bunch of like empty promises and bullshit, and like, I am not a big fan of empty promises. I'm like a very like I get very frustrated when I work with any team, and anytime there's like an attempt to do that kind of like empty promise stuff, I get really upset because it's not the way I like to do things. I like to be honest with people. I think like a lot of community building is like, and especially like marketing this space, like is being transparent.
Yep.
And so I got into crypto working with a team that was like the absolute opposite of that. They were like every avenue they could take to like lie to people was like the avenue they wanted to take. And so I think like I just had a bad like first impression, and then after like talking to Katie and Paul about it, like I was like, okay, so this is like a real thing. Like you guys actually raised money for this game. You have a game that I can go test and play. Like I remember that was part of me jumping on board. Like one of the first things they had me do was like play the game. They like sent me the demo, and I did a play test, and I was like absolutely hooked. I was like, this is the coolest game ever.
There's nothing like playing wildcard for the first time.
Right?
Yeah, it's sick.
It's like the feeling you played for the first time. You're like, what? You're like, whoa, okay,
Yeah.
this is something. And I actually, because of that, ended up meeting a bunch of like now very close friends in this space because they were working, they were doing pudgy gaming at the time, which fizzled out, but it was like that kind of spawned us off over into like this friend group that I've now had for 2.5, almost 3 years. So it's it's cool. Like every kind of stopping point you have is like kind of that chance to kind of meet new people and do new things. And I think if it wasn't for Katie and Paul and meeting them, I probably would have left the space, to be honest. Like I don't think I would have stuck around really, because like I remember I like interviewed with Yuga, had a really bad experience interviewing with Yuga, ended up like like not getting offered the job because the person who was interviewing me like didn't know the job that I was interviewing for.
Oh,
And
I
I talked to like I was talking to Doodles, and I was like bouncing between these companies, and I just wasn't like finding something that was interesting to me. And I was like pretty ready to just be like, okay, this was an interesting, year almost. I'm gonna go back to doing something else.
this will be a fun story.
Yeah, that was my thought, right? And then
Yeah.
now it's been 4 years, and it's no longer kind of this like fun story. It's sort of just like it's very much just become like this is my life, and this is what I do. And I think there's definitely times where we all kind of like sit there and we're like, what if we quit? But that's
for
like
sure.
that's the doom and gloom days that get you. But I think like ultimately end result of everything that's being built is like net positive. So
That's incredible. Shout out a wild card for keeping Finn, man.
keeping me in. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Katie knows it too. She texts me, and Katie text very regularly, still to this day. And yeah, I think she knows that I value them quite a lot.
No, that's amazing.